Josh, do you remember the college application process?
Oh, man, that was a doozy.
I bet. And I mean, I feel like a lot of people feel the exact same way you did. That's why we're bringing on College Beyond, a local nonprofit that helps streamline the application process for Louisiana students. And one of the big things they do is help with FAFSA, which, is part of being able to get scholarships and funding for college.
Oh, man, that sounds great. Who do we have coming on today to talk about that?
We're bringing on Clara, their executive director.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear what they have to say. Let's bring them out. Clara!
Hey, Clara. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell us how the recent decline in FAFSA completion rates are affecting college access for students in Louisiana?
Yeah, of course. I can start with just a little bit about what the FAFSA is. For those of you who aren't aware, it stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And so students usually complete it in order to qualify for federal and state funding. And so about 8 years ago, Louisiana created a FAFSA completion mandate, which required all seniors to complete the form, but as a graduation requirement. This meant that over the last few years, we've been number one actually in the country for FAFSA completion. And an additional 13 states kind of like hopped on the bandwagon and created these FAFSA mandates. And and then last year it was repealed. And so what that's meant is this time last year we were fifth in the nation in terms of FAFSA completion rates. And this year we've dropped to 29th. Yeah.
Dang. That's fast.
Yeah.
That's fast.
Yeah. Definitely very quick. And so, what this means, like for an organization, our goal at College Beyond has always been around college access and persistence, specifically for economically disadvantaged students. And in Louisiana, we are the second poorest state in the nation. 70% of our students who attend public schools are considered economically disadvantaged. And so they rely heavily on these types of grants, whether it be the Pell Grant, TOPS, the GO Grant, things like that, to be able to make college affordable. And so, senior year is already hectic enough. You have not only your academic responsibilities that you're managing, also all the social things that are going on senior year. And for those of the seniors who are the first in their families to potentially explore college, it can be really overwhelming to know like what you're supposed to do and when. And so this mandate made it so that people were really getting the support they needed to complete that application. And so when they're deciding between, do I go to college? Do I pursue a trade? Do I go directly into the workforce? If you don't have that information to know that you qualify for these grants that don't have to be paid back. So right now, the Pell Grant is $7,395 per year that you have to contribute towards college. That can mean that you can go to community college for free. And so a lot of students are thinking, I don't want to take out loans. I'm just going to go into the workforce. But because students can qualify for this grant, they actually wouldn't have to take out loans, but you don't know until you've completed the form. So, I think that it's going to have a lot of negative repercussions when it comes to college access across the state for years to come.
For sure, because I know there's so many students who probably don't realize what they have access to and are just skipping it and just assuming I should go, like you mentioned, straight into the workforce or into a trade school when really they could qualify for going to even a community college or something,
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of times if you're not in a school or an environment where the college going culture, people aren't talking about these things. Your parents might not have heard of it before because they didn't go to college. And so I've talked to a lot of like university presidents who mentioned that they get a lot of their applicants during move-in week. Because students really don't know like what the timeline should be. So, if you're in a school where everyone's applying to maybe like competitive schools out of state, you're like freaking out in August trying to get your letters of recommendation and all that kind of stuff. But in a school where maybe people aren't as focused on going to college, a lot of students, they graduate and they're like, okay, well, what am I doing next? I guess now it's time to take a look into these applications. And so by then you might not have like the teacher to go to or the counselor to kind of help you navigate these complex questions about taxes and all this stuff that usually like a lot of 17 and 18-year-olds haven't really navigated before.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because you mentioned too how fast we've dropped. And I think, it goes to show how we do need infrastructure to like hold down, people and make us accountable. Like we need those like rules in place. Cause like if if you're not forced to do something, especially at that age, you kind of like go, all right, well, I'm not doing it,
Yeah.
And so you kind of just drop off, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And also counselors have their hands so full. I think I read that the average student to counselor ratio in Louisiana is like over 400 to 1. And usually they're not just college counselors. They're also responsible for making sure that you actually can graduate, that, all of the students have their right schedule and things like that. And so it's really hard, especially for students that have more complicated situations at home. Maybe your family, your parents are separated or something like that, to get that one-on-one support if it's not like your top priority.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, in specific, I guess we should really talk more on how College Beyond is specifically, addressing what are you doing now, now that this has become a thing? Like, what are you doing now to help students with finding that access financially for college? And stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our organization supports economically disadvantaged students across southeastern Louisiana, and we support them to and through college. And so on the college access side, we've partnered with a few different high schools, and this is a new initiative. So with Benjamin Franklin High School and Inspire NOLA charter schools, where we're going to be supporting the counselors with just having additional people there to be able to address that counselor to student ratio. And so being able to have someone there that you can say, okay, this student needs some extra support. Can you sit down with them and like help them navigate through this? And so that's what we're doing with them, is just coming to the FAFSA workshops, hosting additional FAFSA workshops, doing one-on-one coaching with them as well. And we've been supporting like kind of dabbling a little bit more into some of the legislative side as well, because a lot of this is happening at that level. And so the Cowan Institute is another organization that has done exceptional work with, ensuring that students have access to just the information that they need around post-secondary affordability. And so we've been working in collaboration with them just to kind of get our feet wet. They've been doing a lot of, advocacy already in Baton Rouge and stuff. Recently, we passed this new piece of legislation through the education committee that helps students understand post-secondary affordability in their financial affordability workshops in high schools. So that's like a little step over there. And then on the college side, we do one-on-one coaching with students. And so we work with them directly to support them in completing the FAFSA. And then we also host FAFSA completion workshops at the institutions that we partner with. We often partner with LASFA, who is another really great resource if people haven't heard of them, who supports with college access and completion. And you can also call them anywhere around the state and ask for additional, like if you need additional support, additional people to help you with your FAFSA completion workshop, and they'll actually send representatives to your school to support you in completing the FAFSA. So yeah, those are some of the ways that we've been supporting, and also working with other groups who are actively doing the work as well, to ensure that as many students as possible are able to complete this form.
Awesome.
Cool. So the workshops are where students are able to access someone who can assist them in filling out the application?
Yeah, typically a lot of schools have FAFSA completion workshops.
Okay.
But it depends, how many adults are in the room compared to how many students might need extra support. And, some students, again, have like a really simple situation. You have a 2-parent household. You can put in your tax information. And some students have more complex situations. Maybe you live with your grandmother and your parents aren't in your life, for example. And so do you file as an independent? But what if it's not like a legal situation? And so in those situations, sometimes it takes multiple days, and not all the counselors have capacity to follow up with a handful of students over multiple days and make sure to kind of like work through some of those like more logistical, more complex issues. And so having additional resources like College Beyond, like LASFA, to support and kind of work through those nuances with the student really helps and makes sure that they actually get through the application.
So something I just had a thought of, and I don't know if you guys do this, I know in like certain rural areas of Louisiana, there isn't access to internet, or sometimes even, people don't have computers in the home. If I remember, excuse me, I did my FAFSA online. Is there a paper version? And like, how do you guys serve those different communities who might not have access to computers and internet more regularly?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. There is a paper version, but I think it's like it's just like trickier. I mean, sending things through snail mail. So typically I think that's, again, part of why going to the FAFSA workshops that are hosted at schools, at universities is most helpful, because it'll usually be held in like a computer lab. There'll be computers offered to students and families, so that, we can kind of avoid that situation. But, each year there's always all sorts of like hiccups where too many people are on the website, so then it crashes and all that kind of stuff happens. And so even just being in that space, like if you've ever like tried to do something complicated online and you're like frustrated and there's no one to ask, and then you're like calling, but now you're on hold for 30 minutes, like it can really be disheartening to like go through that process alone. And so even just being in like a group setting where someone can say, okay, yeah, actually, I saw that this was happening to a couple other people. Hold on tight right here. Let me go and try to figure out what's going on. Okay, we're going to have to pause on this right now, but I'll circle back with you tomorrow. Can just help you like not get to that point of like frustration where you give up, or, you put that to the back and you're like not trying to re-engage with it because of the frustrations of the first time. So yeah, I think the workshops are always like super successful in just supporting people and getting the answers to their questions like right away so they can get through the application.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I'm thinking last night I was doing something that made me very frustrated, and the computer almost got thrown.
Oh, no.
And
so you're trying to go back to the old days. You're trying to get paper ballots, paper everything, baby. Yeah.
So I think I get exactly what I'm feeling that feeling again. And I'm like, I wish there was someone that was like, don't worry, Maya. Like, you'll figure this out.
I mean, that's a big part of it, though. Yeah. I feel like a lot of, like, the feeling that you can do something is so important, especially at that young age, that having that, I can't imagine how many kids feel like they don't want to do the process because they have this college rep or this representative that's supposed to help them through the college process, and that person's like, I'm like 6 months booked, like, figure it out. It's like, that's got to be crazy.
Won't respond to your calls or emails or whatever, and you're like, get to a question, and you're like, what the hell does this mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I went through that process myself, I think my parents filled out the form for me, and I think that's a lot of the case for a lot of students.
Yeah.
But for other students who might be doing it on their own, you're encountering basically with every single question something that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
It's like, what is your family's adjusted gross income? It's like, how many kids have had a conversation with their parents about what their adjusted gross, and what does that even mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it really, we have to kind of have like a little bit of like generosity for the kids that are navigating this on their own, because it's like, okay, now I have to go and talk to my parents about this. They might be like, why are we doing this? I don't want to have to go through my taxes and find this information. And so there's like they call it like friction. There's like friction throughout.
Yeah.
You need other people's support to complete it. You need other people's buy-in. And you need everybody to be willing to go through this kind of like nuanced, sometimes frustrating document at the same time together.
Yeah.
I love that you say buy-in and also that you mentioned your parents doing yours because shout out to Sharon. I'm pretty sure she did mine as well. Thank you.
I mean, the way you're describing it is like what I think it's virtually impossible for any kid to do.
Well, and I also think of
own.
like, I didn't know how much my parents made when I was a senior in high school. So like, it's like, now we're having the awkward conversation of, okay, Mom, what's your salary? Dad, what's your, like, now tell me the gross. Like, it's very, and so it's either you've already had this conversation or it's, but everyone's got to be bought into it because my parents were like, we want you to go to college. And so like, they would set up meetings with my guidance counselor. They were like on me about FAFSA and then probably also eventually just did it themselves for me. Yeah. But like you have to have people who are pushing you and motivating you to get this done because as you said in the start, like as a high school senior, you've got a million other things on your mind.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think again, like, it's a really complicated process that requires so many people to be supportive of you. And so, we're trying to do the best we can to help students understand early on, like what's at stake, how much money is at stake, so that they feel, because, a lot of students will spend a lot of time applying to different scholarships when they haven't completed their FAFSA yet. And it's like, well, there's a guaranteed one right here that you don't have to write a personal statement for. You don't have to get letters of recommendation for. It's really just based off of your need. And so it's just really crucial for students to take that time to complete it.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's almost like the way I would think about it is you need these people to fill out a form that's made by people with college degrees for people with college degrees, and you're expecting someone without a college degree to figure out what the hell to do with this paper. So
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Fix it, Josh. Just get in there.
All right, it's been swell. We'll see y'all later. You want to switch? Ask me the questions now.
So what lessons have you learned from students' experiences and shaping how they approach college and the access to this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been doing this work for about 10 years now, specifically in New Orleans, working with New Orleans public school students. And I feel like I'm constantly learning about how incredibly determined and driven and motivated the students are, and just constantly in awe of like all of the work that they put in. Most recently, we went to the Capitol to do some advocacy again around like Pell. And we had a few students come with us and they talked about the impact that the Pell Grant had on their lives and their ability to be successful in college. There was the couple kids who, or young adults now, who didn't qualify for the Pell Grant initially. And so that year they had multiple jobs, their grades, they were struggling academically because of like the number of jobs that they were balancing in addition to being a full-time student. And then the Pell Grant allowed them to focus on maybe just doing one job for under 20 hours a week. And they talked about how that, helped them increase their GPA, apply for internships and things like that. And so, the kids are putting in so much effort and they're so hardworking and so resilient. And I've found that it's a matter of like, how do you foster strong relationships with them, foster trusting relationships with students, and then help provide them with as much exposure as possible, so that they can really open their minds in terms of like what's possible for them. Because, I think that they can really do anything that they like set their minds to. They've already been able to navigate such extreme odds to get to where they are today. And so really, I think it's a matter of like, how do we get students like access to what's out there so that they can really think big and dream big around like what their future holds. So that's a lot of what we've been doing. I mean, the students that we brought to DC were then thinking about potentially going to law school at Howard and, how they want to maybe work in the government in the future. Like they were really thinking like, I did this. I was able to talk to our representatives and our senators and things like that and advocate for this policy that really means a lot to me. And I could make this a career. And I think, what's always pushed me in this field is like, I think that the students that are impacted by these types of pieces of legislation should be at the table. Oftentimes, it's never the people that are being directly impacted that are in these conversations. It's always people kind of like theoretically being like, oh, how should we structure, student loan repayment and things like that, that maybe their parents paid for all of their college and they didn't have any student loans or things like that. So, it really inspires me like that. That idea that these students will one day have a seat at the table and will be creating the world that they wish they had when they were younger.
That's awesome. And I guess too, I know you mentioned a lot of like things that you noticed. Were there things that, like, I guess a part of your process in particular that you've kind of updated through making it more feasible to help them achieve those ideas, to help them see more opportunities and stuff like that?
Yeah, like you mean through College Beyond?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we do is we send out a lot of surveys, pretty in-depth
That's
surveys.
Good. Okay, gotta know your audience.
And what that allows us to do is like sometimes there are things that students don't talk about, maybe because they're embarrassed or maybe they're not sure if what we will be able to do to help. And so we try to get a lot of information, like as much information as we can early on at the beginning of the year so that we can be proactive throughout the year. So for example, what that looked like this year is that we found that a lot of our students were food insecure. So they were struggling to have access to consistent healthy meals throughout the day. Some of them were going to sleep early because they couldn't feed themselves at night, so they didn't want to feel hungry. And so we created like a SNAP application workshop so that they could qualify for food stamps. We also have a food pantry where students can go and grab, the food that they need and things like that. So that's just one example. We also created like a group tutoring space for students because a lot of them were struggling to like figure out, I think like post-COVID, a lot of like young people struggle with like, okay, like the social interactions and things like that. And so we were finding like a lot of students wanted to be a part of a study group, but didn't know how to, approach the topic and stuff like that. So we're just like, hey, you guys, you're studying the same thing.
Okay.
Come over here. We're doing a study group. And I think to me, it always comes down to the relationships, like having these trusting relationships to be able to connect people with resources, connect people with each other to help them, be successful. Oftentimes, if you're struggling, a lot of students end up struggling in isolation. And there's a ton of resources and people out there that really care and that want to help.
That's interesting. So you're kind of like, you put out like a survey in particular that says like along the lines of, what's preventing you from really getting yourself to that college step. And these are some of the things you're recognizing are, like not very, like they're tangible, but like almost like, they're not the process itself, but it's the lead up to the process that you have to get figured out so you can set yourself up for success.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like, Maslow's hierarchy. You kind of have to make sure, to your point around like, okay, I want to go to college, but do I have access to a computer? Do I have access to internet? Do I have access to food? Like all of these things, I think it often gets forgotten, but these are real issues that our students are navigating. Do I have money to put gas in my car to come to class? And so they're constant kind of like push and pulls that students have to decide like, okay, I want to do well in school, but in order for me to pay for my rent, pay for my gas, to be able to go to school, pay for food, I have to now work 40 hours a week here. And so many of the students are doing both, like working a full day and then doing an entire full course load. And so there's constantly this push and pull over like, what am I willing to sacrifice right now? Am I willing to sacrifice going to class because I have to go to work so that I can make money, so that I can pay for gas, so that I can go to class?
The cycle never ends.
Yeah. So again, that's why these types of like Pell Grants and things like that are helpful because they help take away like $7,000. Just being able to save $7,000 as an 18-year-old is huge. I mean, nearly impossible.
Yeah.
And so for someone to be able to give you that and for you to be able to focus on your academics is huge. And then I'll also say College Beyond also offers a lot of different scholarships to students. We offer microgrants to help pay for those small, barriers that often get in the way of students being able to be successful. We just launched this persistence scholarship last year that helps students who can't re-enroll in school because of an outstanding balance to be able to re-enroll. So, for example, this past year, we helped a senior who was completing her last couple semesters of school, and she wasn't going to be able to get back into school because of this balance. And so we were able to pay down the balance so that she could re-enroll, and she just graduated, or she's about to graduate this week. And so, yeah, it's crucial to kind of be able to kind of know through these different surveys, through, again, having conversations with students, what are the most pressing issues, because it's going to change from student to student, and then be able to provide like a holistic intervention that meets the student where they are.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Made me think of, I have a friend in education, and once I asked her, like, what would you, if you had a magic wand, like, what would be your solution to fix in school system in New Orleans, at least? And it started with nutrition.
Oh, okay.
And she was like, I would want to be able, I think it was like 3 meals for all the students. And she started talking about like the statistics and the studies around nutrition, and how like if you're not eating well, then you can't absorb the information that you're learning. And so it doesn't matter what the teacher's doing. It doesn't matter about anything else if a child is coming to school hungry every day. And so I think that like flipping that mindset about things, also of like, holistically, how do you support a child, young adult, teenager, whatever age they are, like being able to give them that support around? Because if they're so focused on getting a meal, or like you talked about working 40 hours a week, like how do they ever get out of the circle, the never-ending circle of like just trying to survive?
Yeah. I think that's it's hard to kind of think about the experiences that so many of the kids are having each day, because a lot of them are coming to school in kind of like a fight, flight, freeze kind of situation. And we're like, sit down and read this book or behave or do this math problem. When, again, like some of their fundamental needs, like, did they actually get a good night's sleep last night? Did they eat breakfast that morning? All of those things haven't been taken care of. And so, it's crucial that we like, we're not, and I think this is just like the way that almost like our society calls for us to behave, as if we can kind of compartmentalize ourselves. Like, whatever's happening at home is happening at home, and whatever's happening right here at work or at school, I have to show up as like 110%, always, my best self, as if nothing else is impacting me. And that's just not realistic. And so I think it's like approaching things in like a more humane way. Like if we genuinely care for our kids and see them as like, how would we want to care for our own children? We can approach them with just like much more like generosity and kindness and just address some of those needs that they need in order to be able to thrive. I think a lot of kids just want like a trusting adult to be there and to show that they're genuinely interested and care for them and their well-being.
Yeah, man. This is a topic I could spend all day talking about, but we don't have all day, so I have to quickly ask you if people are interested in what we talked about today, whether it is to support or be a part of the program, where would they go and how would they find you?
Yeah, so you can go to collegebeyond.org. We also are very active on socials. So on College Beyond. So yeah, definitely go on collegebeyond.org. Follow us on social media. We always are posting when we're doing these types of different events and things like that. If you are a student or someone needs to take advantage of those types of resources. And then I also mentioned like a couple other organizations like Law LOSFA, LOSFA. That can be a really great resource if you need help with college access, especially as a college counselor or teacher. And the Cowan Institute also, again, does really great advocacy work and has like incredible data. If you're like a data nerd, like I am.
Oh yeah,
not everybody's cup of tea, but if you love education data, specifically New Orleans education data, they're an incredible resource. And
what did you say it was again?
The Cowan Institute. And they also have like a couple like training sessions. It's like a best circles of like best practice for counselors who are either doing like college access or college persistence, where counselors are able to come together and just share like, frustrations, wins, learn more about the work and how to, better advise students and things like that. So those are some of the resources I would highly recommend.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, I have one last thing. I was thinking about this for a while because back in the day, I saw this post about how you can get free college in Norway. Like they'll take you, they give college for free. And I was like, oh my God, how awesome would that be to go to Norway? So my question for all of you guys is, if you could go to college to any country, if you could go back to college to any country, what country would you go to college to? And why?
I mean, this is a hard one because, like, impractical me is like, I'm going to Italy because I love pasta.
What's wrong with that? You could go to pasta college.
I would go to pasta college. I feel like if I married, like, I should have a better reason to want to go, but at the same time, pasta college.
That's a perfect reason. Pasta college.
I'm not going to overthink it.
Don't overthink it. That's it. It's solid.
I don't know. I'm like kind of torn. I feel like I'm like, okay, my brother actually did go to college in Europe. He went to get his graduate degree in Europe, and he got to do this program where he like got to hop around every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
To different
That's
countries.
Like
yeah. And he was like traveling to Morocco because it was like super quick. So I feel like, I don't know, Europe sounds really cool for sure. But then I'm also intrigued by having like a completely different cultural experience. I don't know where I would go though. I don't know. But I don't know. Maybe I'll...
Top of your mind, and what would you say? Pick a country and go. And go.
Maybe I would go to Japan. I've always wanted to go to Kyoto. So maybe I'm like obsessed with like fresh fish and like, it's just like a really interesting place. So maybe I would go to school there.
Nice. Yeah, I was thinking about Japan. But I think it would behoove me not to say Korea just because I'm Korean, but I don't spend enough time there. So it'd be a good way to like actually like revisit my roots while I'm studying about something and like and just kind of see the
really
country
acclimate
from a new
yourself
lens.
and be there
see
for
what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I'd say.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
too.
yeah. So we'll see each other when we go to college.
Come visit me for some pasta.
Yeah, you're going to be making some good pasta, let me tell you. They make it good over there. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so great. Yeah. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Missions Bayou, powered by Comfy Stone. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast wherever you listen. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment, letting us know your thoughts and who you'd like to hear from next. We'll see y'all next time.